like this maneuvering even better than the tool.
Moriarty trying to find some kind of offense here. It's been all still life.
I see some of that maneuvering that she may have learned from Hallowicked, that she may have learned from Orange Cassidy. She's got a way around.
You're watching pro wrestler Edith Surreal in a lively battle against opponent Lee Moriarty. This week, CBSN's Pride Month coverage is focusing on diversity and inclusion. Edith Surreal is a wrestler known for her quick movements and grappling skills. She's also part of a growing LGBTQ pro wrestling scene. Surreal launched her wrestling career back in 2018 with the name Still Life with Apricots and Pears. She had been interested in the sport since childhood, and after a couple years of competing, she came out as transgender. Now she wrestles under the name Edith Surreal. And she joins me now to tell me more about her experience. Edith, thanks so much for being with us. It looks like you have so much fun in the ring, and before we get deeper into the issues, I want you first to tell us about your mask. I confess, this is the first time I have ever done an interview with somebody who was masked.
Oh yeah, it's cute, right? Yeah, I mean the place I started was the place I started training was based was really inspired by a lot of Mexican lucha libre, and the mask is a huge part of that type of wrestling. So all the characters were masked and were these really colorful, larger-than-life characters. So where I started, I was assigned a character, Still Life Apricots and Pears, and they gave me a mask. You know, since then I've moved on. I'm doing my own thing now, but I like to keep the mask. It adds, you know, a lot of mystique to the character. It makes me stand out, and it's like a fun accessory. Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love. As I said, I've never done an interview with a luchador before, so it's great to have you in our show. Talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to launch your career in pro wrestling.
It kind of happened by accident, really. You know, like you said, I was a lifelong fan. I've watched wrestling my entire life. And around 2016, I was working as, you know, an artist and a freelance graphic designer, and I was having gallery shows and stuff like that. And by chance, I got invited to a wrestling workshop. And I wasn't going to go at first, but like my friends kind of egged me on to do it. So I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And, you know, slowly but surely, I was rearranging my whole life to become a professional wrestler. And, you know, the art thing kind of went by the wayside. And now, you know, all I do is wrestle.
Well, this year, as we start to get into some of the meatier issues, I want to talk about what we've seen across state governments, because 8 states have passed bills banning trans women from competing in sports at public high schools and colleges. Idaho passed a similar bill last year. Proponents of the measure say that the purpose is to protect women as a professional athlete. Can you give us your take on this push to restrict trans athletes in sports?
I mean, it's heartbreaking, really, especially in the case of, like, young trans girls in middle school and high school. You know, there's so many benefits to, like, youth sports, especially as difficult it is being young and trans. You know, sports are a great outlet for that. It's a great way for these young women to build confidence, and young trans men, too, and non-binary folks. So, you know, it's difficult to find a good faith argument against allowing these trans kids to compete, especially, you know, in the case where they are on puberty blockers and in some cases hormones, where there really is no advantage. So it's really difficult to separate that issue from, you know, these other measures to restrict gender affirming care for these young kids too. Like, that should strictly be a conversation with their doctor and their parents, and, you know, not politicians. So it's really difficult to separate those two issues and to find a good faith argument against it. You know, if the goal is to protect girls' sports, those conversations are about women in leadership and funding. It's not these edge cases of trans athletes.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what your own experiences have been like. I've seen you wrestling men, I've seen you wrestling women. Have you found that the pro wrestling community has been more accepting of trans athletes, and you in particular, or have you found yourself facing discrimination and pushback?
I mean, by and large, I've been, you know, welcomed with open arms into the wrestling community. You know, the wrestling community is very open and very welcoming. And, you know, a lot of us are kind of like misfit toys in a way. You know, we come to wrestling looking for something, or, you know, you'd have to be a very unique person to become a professional wrestler. It's kind of a crazy thing that we do. So with that mindset and that type of person, you know, people have been so welcoming to me. I'm sure there's been, you know, a few instances of like discrimination or trolls or you know, transphobia and things like that. But I try not to focus on that. You know, I want to be an inspirational character, and I want to inspire people and motivate people. So I try not to shine any light on those negative things. And I just want to be, you know, a source of, you know, positivity.
When you were saying that, there were some of the most incredible photographs of you that we were showing our viewers, of you flying through the air and wrestling. Certainly inspirational for men, women, trans athletes as well, just for everybody. I do want to get back to something that I mentioned earlier. When you started transitioning, you changed your name from Still Life with Apricots and Pears, which I confess I also don't understand, to Edith Surreal, your wrestling name now. What does that change say about your identity as a wrestler? And can you fill me in? What is Still Life with Apricots and Pears?
So my original character, when I started, I was a piece of art. So it's a piece of art created by this other wrestler whose name was Blank, and Blank was the tortured artist, and I was his masterpiece. But that was from a different company, and that storyline has kind of gone away. So I wanted to take more control over my character, and you know, I wanted a new name for that reason. It also paralleled my transition, like as I'm going through the process of changing my legal name, you know, got me thinking about changing my wrestling name. And you know, when I first started, I was this abstract art piece, and I was more of a concept. But the more that I bring people into my life and put my real life into this character, the more people can connect with me, and the more, you know, my audience can grow. So I felt like I also needed a name that was more human, to help me connect with people more. Going back to my mask, when I first started, I had my eyes covered. So, you know, there was no part of my body was showing, but I wanted to remove the eyes just so I could connect with people and they could see the emotion, you know, that I'm putting on into the performance. So it's just, these are just more ways to help connect, you know, to connect with people.
Well, thank you for connecting with us today. Edith Surreal, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
CBSN will mark Pride Month with 4 weeks of coverage. Topics include the politics of pride, diversity, representation, families, education, and health. You can watch the coverage all month long right here on CBSN.